Welcome to the Hope Nature Project.
Sue Jones sold out of the family firm and out of the family home. With the money, she bought a small semi-detached house and just under 20 acres of farmland. Sue Jones loves trees, which she grows from seed off the big oak at the bottom of the garden. More than that, she just thought buying that land and changing its use was the right thing to do.
I was 21 and I'd moved to Mid Wales because my mum had given me a cutting for a job going and doing woodland surveys. Walking around these woodlands, I could see the state of them basically being used as grazing for sheep by farmers that got paid subsidies per head of sheep. There's no regeneration, there's bark being eaten off the trees that was killing them, and I really wanted at that stage to buy some woodland or buy a piece of land and plant trees and look after it. And then just recently I found myself in the position to be able to buy this.
I've been saving these sticks from a scrap bin in the timber merchants, and I'm going to cut points on them to these tree stakes. So I've got no electricity here, but I've got the important thing, which is gas, so I can make a cup of tea.
I was very lucky to have this building on site from the start. It's quite an old cattle shed and has always been used as that. When I arrived, it had a very dodgy asbestos roof. I decided the roof really needed doing. Having worked in the construction industry, and done repeated asbestos awareness trainings, I wasn't comfortable with it being here. So I've had that removed.
Got all my timber stored here, which everyone that knows me knows I just hoard wood. It's genetic, my dad does it too. This will all go into building things like the tree brog structure, and some of the smaller bits will get turned into tree stakes. When I see these brightly coloured flags, it makes me think of things I've done in celebration, like we had an open day to celebrate the first birthday of this being mine. And lots of people came, and brilliant atmosphere. It was the hottest day of the year, but part of what it's about is welcoming people in to connect with the project.
Right, okay, the whole project is just under 20 acres, and I would tell you it in hectares. It's something like 8 hectares or something like that, and that's spread over 3 fields. The top one is quite large and squarish and flat, very flat. The middle one is slightly sloping to the south, so that's a lovely aspect. You can see a bit of a distance from there, which is nice. And then along the bottom of that one, making the shape of like a top hat, if you like, is a long narrow field that is very, very long and thin. And then the end of that, the boundary is the embankment for the Bridgewater and Taunton Canal. This baby woodland was planted 1 season ago, so it's 1 year old in here. It was planted as mixed species, shrubs and trees. And the trees were all brought to me by a group called Reimagine the Levels, who provide funding for slowing down flooding. So the idea being that the trees break up the soil, they absorb the water from heavy rainfall, and it means it doesn't get out and flash flood lanes and the levels quite as fast as it would otherwise. We had a really good success rate last year, only lost a handful of trees out of the 440 that's planted here, so that was great. The lowest field is very wet by nature, and you can see from the satellite view on Google Earth that it's where the line of the old watercourse would have gone, and then at some point it's been drained to take the water around the edges of it to have usable pasture. So I have got the option of maybe reinstating that, although I'm in two minds about that, because the carbon impact of the earth moving, both from disturbing the soil and also the plant and the machinery that moves it, Although there's no denying that that for wildlife it would be amazing. So here we are in the bottom field. It's the lowest bit. It's wetter, and it's a candidate for rewilding. So I want nature to decide what happens here. We're going to plant pockets of trees like little islands for nature to move into and spread out from. And then there's higher ground over there that will have drier loving species in it, like a lot of the oaks I've got, and beech, and yeah, the usual cross section of woodland species. And then the wetter bits will have more willow and alder, which like it wet.
In January, a big surge of new planting, with help from friends, in went 3,200 more trees, on a plan laid out by Sue with a soccer ref's line marker. Good tip.
Okay, so the middle field is the one where the shed is in the corner of. What's already here in this field is a field pond, which would have been created maybe 150, 200 years ago, maybe older. That would have been for watering stock. So they dug a scrape into the ground to collect and hold water. Over time, these nearly always end up surrounded by trees and scrub. So other than that, the main field is a big empty space. The far side of it I'm probably going to fill up with some mixed woodland, but leaning towards it being mostly oak, because I've got a lot of baby oaks. At the top of this field there'll be a tree bog toilet, which is like a compost toilet, but by being planted around with hungry species like willow, it actually does turn everything that you deposit, so to speak, into biomass, which is ideal. You don't have to dig them out, which is even more ideal. So the top field has the lane running along the north edge of it. I have to maintain that, so I'm hoping to lay that this winter. For me on my own, it might be a bit of a challenge, so I've been making inquiries into having some help. So it's a very large, squarish open space. In the middle of the southern part of it is another field pond. It's more enclosed than the other one, and you can only get into it from one side, that stays wet for most of the year. To one side of the meadow will be another planting of mixed woodland, and then to the west-northwest side there'll be a coppice area. So I'll grow hazel and birch and sweet chestnut for the timber, for firewood, for poles, for things, for fencing. One thing that struck me about taking on this land is that it seems wrong to take it out of food production completely. So the orchard row, I'm gradually working on to protect more of the trees. There's about 30 of them up there, fruit trees, and I didn't have the protections for all of them, so whenever a bit of fencing wire shows up and some posts, I'll go and do another one and make it safe.
What's the future of the site for you?
As soon as possible, I'd like to be able to invite people in, schools, groups, people for whom being in touch with nature would help their mental health, and home educators. And longer term, I'm not going to last forever, and at the rate as this is wearing me out as well. So in the long run, although my kids love what I'm doing here, I'm not sure if they would take it on to properly manage it. So my thoughts are, do I leave it to the Woodland Trust or Somerset Wildlife Trust or some other group that can oversee it, caretake and use it with the ethos that I've hopefully already got here, going into the future, and not just turn into a ploughed up maize field That's the ideal.
What have the neighbours had to say? I mean, this is a big change in their views, the local land use, all that.
This did very sadly become a bone of contention to that once the trees started going in, the neighbours that are closest by were very worried about how it would affect their view. Sadly, the reality of in the winter of the planting and a forest of green tubes arriving overnight, the reality was not what I think they envisaged. I feel that I should have done a better job of actually informing them of what that would look like and how it might impact them. I could have tried harder, basically, and it's made me sad that something which I see as quite brilliant should negatively impact on anybody else. It doesn't sit right.
The summer celebration in this year was a little more subdued, but perhaps that was mainly because of the wind and the rain. But you have to admit it's been a big year for the Hope Nature Project. One thing we can say for sure is this landscape has been changed.